Can everybody see my screen? Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll be presenting today on Community Core. This is by no means an extensive presentation, but we try to highlight the most important elements that we would like to share with you and discuss for the upcoming year. Ashley will also be helping out and answer any questions about the program. I'll be pausing a few times during the presentation to make sure I'm answering any questions you have, so feel free to unmute yourself at any point. So the topics that we will cover today is briefly, what is Community Core, how to get involved and how to participate, how to orient, onboard and manage your student, and what changes or what updates do we have for Community Core for the upcoming academic year. So what is Community Core? It is, although one of the smaller program in terms of the time of engagement, it is one of the largest student engagement programs that we have at the Swear Center. We have at least, on a typical year, more than 500 students engaged and bright students engaged in different organizations. So this program is an opportunity for partners to access students who are able to commit to make a minimum commitment of 2 to 3 hours per week on a semester. And it's an opportunity for students to engage with community organizations in different ways. But there are 3 main, I guess, subdivisions or ways to engage under Community Core for students. So they can either engage as unpaid volunteers with an organization. They can also engage as paid fellows under the off-campus for their work study, which we'll discuss later on, or they can affiliate to a student group and have that student group affiliate with the community organization overall. And I can discuss that in more detail in the following slides. Okay. So for off-campus further work study, it is one of the opportunities for students to engage in Community Core and receive payments from their engagements. They receive compensation through Community Core. It is at no cost for the organization during the academic year. During the summer time, there's a small portion just that is given to FICA, but for the academic year, there's no cost at all. If the organization is interested in joining Community Core and having their students receive payment under off-campus for their work study, the only thing they would need to do is they will need to indicate the wage of the position they are sharing or advertising for. They will need to sign a work-study contract with the Office of Financial Aid, and finally verify student hours like they would with any other Community Core program overall. I'll pause here for a second and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Just so to summarize, and by the way, I'm Kim Reel with the Met High School. So if I wanted this student to help with our students, I could get this person at no cost to my organization?
Correct. There will be a process which I'll be discussing later on how to join, etc. But okay, essentially, a Community Core student can be at no cost to the organization, yes.
Okay, okay, great.
Any other questions?
This isn't a question, Nadia, but this is Ashley. Do you mind if I just name something really quickly?
Of course.
This is something we've discussed with some, partners in the past, and I think it is an important thing to name based on how Community Core is structured. So you as an organization might say, I want 10 students to provide virtual tutoring for my, adult education class that my organization leads. And you might submit that as a Community Core opportunity, and you get 20 applications, you're selecting 10 students. If you say, yes, I'm willing to be an off-campus federal work-study employer when you apply to host that Community Core student, 5 of those students that you ultimately hire may be work-study eligible and the other 5 may not. And so what that means is that you'll have 10 students and some of them will be getting compensated for the work that they're doing and some of them will not, right? And we've grappled with partners about the sort of feeling, I think, seeming, but also I think real inequity in that. And I just want to name it, which is not to say we have a resolution for it, but just to sort of illuminate further that SWER, along with the university, shifted its sort of compensation practices a few years ago to really tie compensation with any program to demonstrated student need. So really the reason why there's that distinction, why you see that your role could be paid or unpaid, and it really depends on the students who engage, is that some students will be eligible for work study based on their sort of declared financial situation with the Office of Financial Aid and Student Employment, and some students are not. And so again, we just want to name and be clear about that distinction and why you may have paid and unpaid students, and why we ask you if you're willing to be a work study employer when you submit that Community Core opportunity. It's so that students who are work study eligible are able to engage in these sort of historically off campus, but still with off campus partners sort of engagement opportunities. I think where historically the numbers have shown us that students with demonstrated financial need have sort of been locked out of that, because when they were purely volunteer, the opportunity cost for a student to sort of take time to volunteer versus getting that off campus job often had them leaning towards pursuing that opportunity for which they could be compensated. So I just wanted to name that, and happy to answer any further questions for folks to the best of my ability about that.
Thank you, Ashley. And the only thing I would add there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, is that we at the SWER Center would not have prior knowledge of which student is or is not eligible to off-campus federal work study. That's a process that happens once they apply to a particular position. You as the community partner, once you will hire or select them, then you will receive information of whether or not they are.
That's absolutely correct. So yes, like nobody's giving Ashley Green like information on who receives aid at the university. We work really closely with the Office of Financial Aid and Student Employment to administer the off-campus element of the Community Core program. And so students apply, they might indicate in our application that they believe themselves to be eligible. And we ask, that's why we ask you in our forms, are you willing to serve as an employer? And if so, what is the wage that you would set? And so they can see what opportunities have wages attached to them and are open to work study students. And so they might use that to inform their decision on which positions to apply for. And then yes, the process goes from there. And in terms of the cost, some of you may engage in work study through other institutions, in other places, or have done it yourself in the past. The federal government pays a portion through work study dollars of those students' wages. Historically, except for a very narrow set of exceptions, then the organization that's serving as the employer would have to pay the other portion. What the SWER Center did a few years ago, I think we're going into year 3 now, is we said, listen, we don't want that to be a cost to our partner. We're going to raise the dollars. So we cover what would otherwise, and what may in other places be the cost share for the partner. So that's covered by the SWER Center, which is why during the academic year, there's no cost to you. Now, if you take on a work study student during the summer, the federal government classifies work studies jobs during the summer a little bit differently. And so they do require that the partner organization as the employer pay the FICA, the wage tax. And that's not something that the institution is allowed to cover in the same way that we can cover the cost share. So we'll still cover the cost share, but for those of you who have taken on work study students, or if you've ever seen our RFP for summer work study opportunities, we try to name that very explicitly, that the organization should budget. It stands at 7% now for 7% of the anticipated sort of gross wage of any summer work study students that they take on.
How do you set the wages for these positions?
Yeah, great question. There is some guidance in the RFP that will go out, and there's a little, chart which asks you questions about, is it this type of responsibility or this type of responsibility, and it sort of gives a range within that. And we invite a range too, so we try to align so that it is aligned with on-campus work study, the on-campus work study student wage window as well. So we send guidance with a table with sort of a checklist of what are the sorts of responsibilities and what is a corresponding wage. And then sort of within those bounds, we ask the partner to set. And I think for this upcoming semester, my team will help me if I'm wrong. Please don't take this as gospel. You get the more precise information soon, but it's between, I think, 1120 and 1380. I think
Exactly.
Oh, got it right.
All right, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna keep moving, but if I see any hands raised or any questions, feel free to interrupt. So moving forward to the student group branch or type of community course. So we've highlighted here the example of One Neighborhood Builders, a debate community school. So it is an organization, it's a community-based organization, has a need for students, has relationships and knowledge of target participants, and has knowledge of the field and has expertise in this field, and has the capacity to supervise and train these students and share this knowledge with them. We have also an example of a student group called Brown Elementary After School Mentoring, or BEAM. The student group is doing direct service with organizations, maybe doing it on volunteer basis or doing it under off-campus for their work study. And through because they're registered as a student group with the Student Activities Office at Brown, they have access to petition for funds, access to account and manage funds, and access to recruit students. So through a partnership with a student group like BEAM with Debate Community School, they are able to receive the knowledge and expertise from Debate and leverage and access more students that Debate will ultimately benefit from. So that's an example of where a student group may make sense for community organizations. And I'm sharing here a few examples of community core numbers, and these numbers are shared from our Brown Engage page. So they might not be exact as of today, but it is roughly the number for this year. So for student or community core students under the SWARE Center, we had 738 students engaging with community core under SWARE. These students have logged in more than 12,000 hours this year and have leveraged $333,000 of in-kind contributions. And under Debate, and I think Delania is here, so she can correct me if these numbers are not exact, but they've had around 100 students at Debate. These students have logged in around 2,000 or more than 2,000 hours and have leveraged more than 68,000 in-kind resources.
And just a quick note, that in-kind sort of value of the volunteer time is using the independent sector number that is released each year.
Thank you, Ashley. Moving forward to how we can all partner and work together in making this happen. So the partner would apply to host a community core student by submitting the position description and confirming the ability to employ off-campus federal work-study eligible students. They would interview or select the students after they receive applications. Once they select the student, they would orient, train, and supervise these students regularly, and finally verify the hours on Brown Engage. On the student, on the SWARE Center part, we will also support in orienting, training, and screening the students as applicable. We confirm the eligibility for off-campus for the work-study students, and finally conduct PCIs for school-based volunteers. On the student side, the students would obviously apply, participate on the community core site trainings, engage in 2 to 3 hours per week on average, participate in one semester at least or more, and log in hours on Brown Engage and log in their impacts. Moving forward, and I can see that we have a couple of minutes. So I wanted to also hear from you. If you have deployed students already, what sort of virtual projects have you had your students work on at your organization? Or if you plan to deploy community core students, what are your plans on deploying them at your organization that would best benefit your organization? If you do not, what organizational priorities lend themselves to virtual work or engagement at your site? So I see that I do not have access to split us into breakout rooms. I would ask that maybe, Alex, could you maybe do 5 minutes breakout session for maybe 2 or 3 groups, and we can all share?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Nadia, maybe just flash those questions up again so folks have
Yep.
it.
I've shared the questions on the chat. While maybe Alex is setting that up, if you have any answers right this second, you're welcome to share as well.
All right, I'll be opening up those rooms right now.
Thank you. Hello.
Oh, are we in breakout room 3?
I'm not sure, but I just shared the questions on the chat again. Looks like this is one of the breakout sessions.
No, this isn't a breakout session.
Yeah, this is the main group still.
Yeah,
Okay.
I never joined the breakout session 3.
Okay.
Let me assign you all.
Did you want us to go into a breakout session, Nadia?
I rather, yeah, I don't, it's up to you. Maybe at least one can stay on the main group.
Why?
Yeah, we already have. Oh wait. Here, let me assign you, Elena, to breakout 3 actually, because or breakout 1 because we need a staff member on that one.
Okay.
What the?
Alexis is in that one.
Oh, okay. In which case we have well, we all have at least one person in each group of 3. All right, Elena, we'll be bringing people back now.
Okay.
I see that folks are slowly returning. Okay, I'm gonna have another look, see if everybody's back. Looks like we're missing a few people still. Nope, we have everybody. Great. Well, thank you so much for your feedback, for your discussions. I got a lot from my breakout sessions, so I hope you also got a lot from yours, and maybe my team was with you in your breakout sessions to take notes or take any questions you have for us to answer later on. But moving on to the presentation, I'm going to share again my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Elena. So moving on to steps to engage through community core and how to engage through community core. So the first step is submit your community core opportunities. So later this week, you will be receiving an RFP or an announcement for the community core opportunity this coming year. You'll have instructions on how to apply and the main timeline of next steps, but I'll be just sharing it with you very briefly here. But the main thing is sharing your opportunity listed in your job description. And the second thing is making sure that the position, the supervisor for this position has an account on Brown Engage, and their email address is linked to that Brown Engage account. That way, the students, when they're applying for these positions, the position supervisor will receive the notification directly on their inbox. That's the main, one of the main important pieces to keep in mind while applying for this position. And the second piece is to look out for notifications on Brown Engage. A lot of people would look at Brown Engage notifications and maybe think it are spam or overlook them for one reason or another, but most likely those notifications for student applications will be received via Brown Engage into your main inbox. So keep an eye out for that. Step two, or before step two, this is what the position would look like when you receive it. You will see something that says so-and-so has applied to Community Core application 2021. Hi, the name of the site supervisor, so-and-so has applied for this position. Once you click on that application, then you'll see in detail the description of the student application. So mainly it would give you the name, how to contact them, few information about them, and then how to select them. But before we move on with that, during the RFP or during our call for partnership under Community Core, you will also be receiving a contract called the OffCampus, the OffCampus Further Work Study contract. It is basically a contract to make sure that the students, if eligible to off-campus Further Work Study, they are serving at your site with the indicated hours, and that you agree to have them engage with your organization. You will sign this contract and then submit it to the financial aid office, and it's usually linked on this contract, how to submit it or the email address that you need to send it to. We have in the past sent this once you identify an off-campus further work study student, but this year we would ask that you sign this contract prior to even selecting a final student, just to make sure that the student will be receiving their pay as soon as they get selected, or as soon as they start their engagement at your site. There were few delays in the student payment in the past, and we were hoping that this step will make sure that that the student will receive it on time. So be on the lookout for this document as well on the RFP. And then moving on to step 3, which is interviewing these students. This is totally optional, and it depends on your site. It depends on how many students you'll be receiving. There has many variables. We do not require that you interview all the students that you will be receiving applications from. But as soon as you select a student, we would ask that you submit a hire form here, which is what we have at step 4. The hire form is also attached on the RFP that we will be sharing this week, and it's basically asking for your email address, your organization, the name of the student, and the amount or the pay that you have designated for them. It's a fairly quick form, but we ask that you submit it as soon as you identify a student, so we can make sure that the process goes smoothly. And step 3 is, once you have selected the student, it is usually you would receive an email from the financial aid office confirming that the student is eligible and has accepted to start their engagement at your site. Once you receive that information, all you need to do is set up time and select or build an onboarding plan for them. We do not have a set structure for what you need to onboard students, but here are a few suggestions that we included here. You can onboard them on the policies and procedures at your site, the mission and values, the structure of the team, the supervision chain, and the reporting structure. So those are examples, but again, it really would depend from one site to another, the type of work that the student will be doing and where they fit under your reporting change. So I can also pause here and say see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with the Met High School, and my role is like a partnership manager. Mm-hmm. But you know, I kind of feed out to 52 advisors. These are the teachers that work with the students from 9th to 12th grade. Like they have the same students, 9th to 12th grade. So if I like made a little summary and put this out to the teachers, all 52 of them, right? Like, hey, do you want a volunteer 2 to 3 hours a week? Like there's no way like I could personally manage like if a bunch of them like respond yes. Like could each teacher sign up on Engage to like get their own student and kind of do it themselves?
That's a very good question. So we did have cases where it's multiple supervisors, and it may get out of hand if each one of them has a Brown Engage account. The goal for suggesting that is so that we have a designated person so they can interview or select the students. So if you would rather select the students for these teachers, by all means, you can add your own account. If you'd rather not be involved in the recruitment process and you rather some other teacher do, you can designate one of the teachers to do it or multiple. We would defer to you, but as long as there's at least one person doing the interviewing and the selection of these community core students.
Okay,
I would also pass it to Ashley if Ashley has any suggestions for this.
Yeah, hi, Kim. Thank you for that question. There's really no prohibition within the Brown Engage system or really any of our systems for multiple people signing up. You know, we would just want to work closely with you and whoever else you say would be relevant to like keep track of it sort of more broadly, but there would be no, you know, prohibition on that necessarily. You know, we'd love to think through this more with you. So for example, if, you know, there may be 52 teachers, but if sort of fundamentally all or some subset of them are asking for similar kinds of engagement, maybe in their classroom spaces, you know, just in terms of what students see when they look at the opportunities, you know, if they're going to be sort of fundamentally similar, it might make sense to have one description and say sort of multiple supervisors, and then we identify sort of who among that subset gets the notifications and then can disseminate. I think there are lots of potential workarounds, but strictly speaking, there's no prohibition for like everybody to sign up for a Brown Engaged.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want that. You know, I could see that. No, I'm thinking maybe, you know, there's with our incoming 9th graders, there might be some niche, you know, working with the students in a very similar way. So maybe that's something we could talk about.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Charlie from Oasis. A couple of people mentioned things in the breakout session that they had community core students do. But my question is, are there any guidelines or boundaries or criteria for what community core students can do? Or could it be any project you come up with?
That's a really, really great question. And there's sort of two pieces to the answer, unfortunately, that hopefully aren't too confusing. So broadly speaking, it can be any project you come up with, provided it fits within the SWARE guidelines. So it must be able to be done virtually, you know, at least for the upcoming semester. But then really it can sort of fit within any, you know, mission-aligned aim of your organization. I'm answering this a little bit broadly because I think it's sort of nuanced with organizations, but, you know, if you're dealing with, and you know, for anybody, if you're dealing with vulnerable populations of any kind, and there are sort of standards and guidelines within your field about how that's done, we would want, you know, the position to be structured to abide by those as well. So that's what I would say are sort of the caveats. The current engagement guidelines that the SWARE Center and the university have implemented, and then also any guidance, policies, or guidelines from your field, particularly if we're talking about Brown students engaging directly with vulnerable populations, because, you know, we've come to understand as we work with different partners that there are those policies and procedures that say, you know, folks don't have certain level of experience or credentialing, they need to be supervised by someone who does. So we would want it to abide by all of those things. So there's that side. And then there are, if you are engaging a work study eligible student in particular, there are some loosely worded, but they exist, parameters that the federal government has put in place for students who would be receiving work study dollars. And so, you know, we can certainly send more information that goes into more detail about that, but broadly speaking, they say sort of any work that is for the public good. Again, it's very broadly defined, but they're real and they're there. And so we always try to share that information with folks as well in specifics, so that they're able to be aware of that, specifically if you're taking on a work study eligible student. And that's one of the reasons why we work so closely with the Office of Financial Aid to administer the work study portion, is that they are the second set of layer of eyes and checking to make sure that all of the sort of federal guidelines are being met for that program. And my team will help me, I don't think I can remember in recent memory that we've had to turn away any, for either work study or generally an opportunity that was submitted for community core. But we're happy to have a sort of direct conversation, Charles. If you're thinking about something and you have a question, we can sort of talk it through. But, you know, I don't know, you might, you know, someone might surprise us, but I don't know that anything you're conceiving of might, you know, be outside of any of the parameters I've just named.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Ashley. We do have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to make sure to wrap up this quick and then leave it for any additional questions you all can have. So moving forward to once you have onboarded your students, how you can manage the volunteer engagement and the hours. So you can do that via Brown Engage, and you can do that once you have your community core group or your organizations group. You can go to Brown Engage, select admin. Once you hit the tab next to admin, you can click on manage group. Once you click on manage group, you'll be seeing a page that looks like this with multiple tabs. You can click on impacts. Under impacts, you click on manage impacts. Then it would take you to a page that looks similar to this. You may have multiple students engaging, or one student engaging or has logged multiple impacts. If you want to select just a specific impact, you can just click on check next to their name, hit action, and then verify or not dispute impact. If you would like to do that for multiple students or multiple impacts, you can select or check the multiple names, then hit bulk actions on the top right, then verify the selected impact, and that would select all the verified or all the list of impacts that you have hit check on. I personally just select it so that I receive notifications anytime a student logs in their impact. And I usually would receive on my Gmail an email saying that so-and-so has given 40 or X amount of hours between this date and this date, and then it would just simply ask me to verify or not verify that impact. If you rather not be bombarded with emails from Brown Engage anytime your student logs in impact, you can do it the previous ways, but these are the few options that you have to log in the impact or the hours for your community core students. And then finally, community core and how it looks like for this upcoming fiscal year. There are 3 major changes, and most of them really Ashley has covered earlier this morning, but I want to make sure that that's covered here as it relates to community core. So the first thing is that community core will shift to virtual engagement as for the rest of our programs at SWARE. The second update is that the community core start and end dates will change and will shift. So for the fall term, we are looking at a start date of September 23rd and would end around November 24th. For the spring term, it will start in February 3rd and end in April 16th. As for the summer term, it is still yet to be defined, and I believe that's because we're still figuring out how the community core would overlap with the summer community core and the off-campus further work study allocation for that time. We should know in the next few weeks, but as soon as we find out, we'll definitely send an email. It will be on our newsletter, and we'll make sure that you all have the most updated information on this. The final update is, as you know, that the students may not be here for all the 3 semesters, and that they will be in at least 2 of the 3 semesters, depending on which student or which year their students are. And the final thing I want to share with you is that our team is here to help and support throughout this whole process. Elena and I have reached out to a good number of our partners in the past couple of weeks to schedule check-ins in the coming weeks. and to discuss how this would mean for each one of your students. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Elena, and we're happy to discuss that. If you have any issues, we're also happy to navigate that with you and to see ways forward. And we will be sharing this presentation along with the slides and the recording of this presentation with you. We can also feel free to also use Brown Engage as a resource. There's a Brown Engage video guide on YouTube that I think Alex or Alexis will be sharing later on. And finally, the community partner handbook. Thank you all. Any questions I may answer at this point?
I guess Nadia, when is the deadline for this upcoming year to like post a job description?
So we will be sharing the RFP this week. So I believe the deadline will be the 28th of the upcoming month. So September 28th. But we will share the instructions this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's also 10:47. I'm gonna stop sharing at this point and see if you have any other questions, please maybe share them on the chat and I can answer them privately, but I will hand it over to Elena for the following presentation on Bonner.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much, everybody. Just before Elena takes over, I see she's loading up her screen. We know we went quickly through some of those Brown Engage pieces. You know, worry not, Nadia and Elena, as Nadia said, are following up with everybody who needs that support, and we'll reshare all of the, resources that are out there, the Brown Engage visual guide, the Brown Engage video tutorials, and the information in our handbook that has all of that. And anytime, as you know, that you are just like having a particular challenge with the Brown Engage system, we have folks on deck here to support, but hopefully that we've been trying to sort of update the processes to hopefully make that less challenging.